Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan. Today I'm going to tell you this game's with your time and bandwidth. Today's game is Wolfenstein Youngblood. BJ Blazkowicz has gone missing and it's up to his $2 to find out what's up in this 1980s version of the New Order's alternate future. Is it worth grabbing a friend for some sibling Nazi extermination? Wolfenstein Youngblood is available on PC, Xbox, Switch, and PlayStation, basically everything, and it's also available via Xbox Game Pass. Should you wish to buy it, it runs at about $20, and the game will take you about 9 hours to beat based on how well your co-op partner plays. So what exactly is Wolfenstein Youngblood? Well, it's a game that attempts to evolve the boomy shooty formula set in the previous alternate history Wolfenstein games by adding leveling, zones with scaling enemies, and missions, upgrades, and perks, and a bunch of other games as service stuff. And you guys know how much I love games as service. You play as Jesse and Zofia, BJ and Anna's twin daughters, who, when BJ mysteriously disappears for an unknown reason, head off with one of their friends, equipped with power suits and guns to blow up Nazis all over France. While the basic shooting remains the same, the core loop has changed significantly. You now have a hub area where you take missions from various resistance members who will send you out to different zones across the map for you to venture to via metro. These zones often scale to your difficulty, though missions do not, and are usually fairly small, requiring you to traverse them to complete various sub-objectives and goals. There's also tons of hidden stuff in these areas to keep you busy along the way should you wish. And if this is starting to sound a bit like the Ubisoft formula but chopped up rather than open world, you would be correct, with a little bit of Destiny in there too. Killing enemies and doing objectives grants XP, which in turn lets you level up, which in turn gives you skill points to buff your character. These include things like dual wielding, more health and armor, equipping turret guns, and so on. You also find silver coins basically everywhere which you use to modify your guns, which in a neat trick, if you choose 3 of the same type of modifications, you'll get a permanent perk to the weapon as well. You'll be doing all of this in co-op, either with a friend, random, or AI partner. You both tier up to 3 lives, so if one of you goes down and isn't picked up, the life is lost. Lose all 3 and there's a checkpoint. While there is an insane amount of side stuff to do, the main story itself is pretty basic, although you can't just blitz through it as it does eventually level gate you a few hours in, meaning you do have to do some of the side stuff. The side zones do reset every time you leave them and come back, meaning enemies respawn and you'll be traversing the same pathways over and over until you're strong enough for the main mission. I'm not going to talk about the story because I'll be honest, after the first 2 hours of cutscenes I found it so obnoxious I just skipped them all. If you want an in-depth look at the themes and cultural significance of Wolfenstein Youngblood's plot, I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it. And that is about it. Wolfenstein Youngblood takes the franchise in a new and terrible, interesting direction by adding some modern FPS games as service stuff to hamper your feelings of progression and artificially stretch out the length. I'm not bitter. So what do I like about Wolfenstein Youngblood? Well, the general feeling of shooting still is fantastic, like the previous games in this series, with guns being punchy and enemies dying horribly as expected. Additionally, the game has an armor system that's interesting. Certain enemies are resistant to certain types of weapons until their armor is shot off, which I think is an interesting way to get you to mix up gunplay. It is hard to read visibly, but ultimately it definitely kept me on my toes. And lastly, this game is okay playing with humans, which is a bit of a reach because I'll admit most games are from friends. But honestly, it reminded me of RE6, where you can still have a good time with a not so good game if you have good co-op company. When it comes to the bad, the level scaling enemies and zones don't gel well with the boomy shooty feel that you're supposed to feel with these types of games, meaning you'll usually either be completely overpowered in a zone or insanely underpowered. In both situations suck. Additionally, the AI co-op partner is unbelievably stupid. She loves to suicide against bosses, ignores reviving you, doesn't really attack that much, and stands in front of your shots. Single player of this game was not fun for me. And lastly, I found Jesse and Zofia aggressively obnoxious in their constant quip and general over-exaggerated 1980s attitude. Honestly, I usually enjoy terrible one-liners and corny jokes, and some of them do land, but overall it's just too much all of the time, with some bad lines paired with the story that really didn't work for me at all. As you know, I rate games here on a 3-point scale. Must play, maybe consider, don't bother. I don't think you should play Wolfenstein Youngblood. It is a game that I actually liked for the first hour or so, before the game's service stuff really kicked in, but it's all in service of an awful gameplay loop with horrible balance issues out the wazoo. Turning the series into Far Cry Light was a mismatch, and while you could probably still have fun while playing with a friend, there are so many other games in the space that do this type of thing better that you're better off just passing on this. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you played Wolfenstein Youngblood, let me know what you think about it in the comments, but regardless, you should probably give this one a pass.